I bought a used car on a quiet gray Tuesday, and 4 days later, a GPS address inside it changed my life. The car itself wasn't remarkable. A 2018 Honda Civic with 65,000 miles, in decent shape and reasonably priced. I wasn't chasing excitement when I bought it. I just needed something dependable to get me from a job I disliked to an apartment where I lived alone. But the car's GPS had one saved destination, labeled home. Out of simple curiosity, I decided to follow it. That small choice led me to a mountain overlook and to an old man waiting on a bench. "You came," he said, as though he'd been expecting me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask, have you ever followed your curiosity somewhere unexpected? Share your story in the comments. And if you enjoy true stories about unexpected connections, purpose, and how strangers can change our lives, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's go back to that Saturday when I drove to an address that was mine. I was lost, not in a physical sense. I knew every turn between my apartment and the office by heart. But I was lost in a deeper way. The kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering what you're doing with your life and why nothing feels meaningful anymore. 2 years earlier, I dropped out of grad school. I'd been studying English literature, the kind of degree people pursue when they're not sure what comes next. But halfway through my second year, I looked around at my classmates, debating theory, and felt nothing. No spark, no purpose. I realized I was just moving through the motions because I didn't know what else to do. So I quit. Since then, I'd been working at a call center for a cable company, taking customer complaints for $17 an hour. I lived in a small studio apartment in the cheapest part of town, watching life move forward for everyone but me. My college friends were getting married, buying homes, starting careers that seemed meaningful. My social media feed was full of engagement photos, job promotions, and travel pictures from places I couldn't afford to visit. And I was just here, taking angry phone calls, eating microwave dinners, and trying to remember what it felt like to care about anything. A week before I found that GPS address, my old car, a 2004 Corolla with 200,000 miles, finally gave out. I took the bus for a few days, then decided to buy something fast. Nothing fancy, just practical. That's how I ended up at a used car lot on the edge of town, where a tired salesman in his 50s showed me the Civic. He handed me the Carfax, said it had been well maintained, and mentioned it came from an estate sale. "Owner passed away," he said. "Family sold the car. Clean title, no accidents." I took it for a test drive. It was fine, not exciting, not terrible, just fine. I signed the papers, stretched my budget, and drove it home a couple of days later. Reliable, unremarkable, functional, exactly what I needed. That Friday night, after another draining shift at the call center, I sat in my new car in the parking lot, too tired to move. While setting up my Bluetooth, I noticed the GPS had one saved address: home. I figured it belonged to the previous owner, probably forgotten when the family sold the car. My first thought was to delete it, but something stopped me. What did home mean to them? It was a small, harmless curiosity, but I had nowhere else to be. No plans, no one waiting. So the next morning, I decided to follow it, just to see where it led. I expected a normal destination, maybe a house, an apartment complex, or an old neighborhood. But the GPS took me in a different direction, out of the city, onto highways then smaller country roads, and finally up narrow, twisting mountain paths lined with pine trees. 2 hours later, I arrived at a scenic overlook carved into the mountainside. A quiet spot with a wooden deck, a single bench, and a breathtaking view of valleys and peaks. And sitting there, on that bench, was an elderly man. He looked to be in his 70s, with white hair, a worn face, and a flannel jacket despite the mild air. He stared out over the mountains with an expression that was both peaceful and deeply sad. I hesitated, unsure what to do. But as I stepped closer, he turned toward me, then glanced at the car behind me and smiled. "You came," he said warmly, as though my arrival confirmed something. I knew someone would, eventually. I stopped a few feet away, confused. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He shook his head gently. "No, but I know your car." He nodded toward the Civic. "That belonged to my son, Michael Carver. He died 8 months ago." My chest tightened. "I am so sorry. I bought it from a dealer. I didn't know." "That's all right," the man said softly. "That's how it was meant to happen. I'm Thomas, by the way. Thomas Carver. And you are?" "Ben," And back to the car. "I don't understand. The GPS had a saved address. I was curious, so I followed it." Thomas smiled faintly, though his eyes glistened. That's what Michael hoped for. He said whoever bought the car, if they were the right kind of person, would be curious enough to follow it. And he told me that when someone finally did, I should be here waiting. I sat down beside him, still bewildered. Why? What was he trying to do? Thomas patted the bench beside him. "Let me tell you about my son." Thomas began speaking, his voice steady, but full of quiet grief. "Michael was 32 when he passed," he said. "Cancer. It started in his lungs. He never smoked, just one of those things life throws at you. By the time they found it, it had already spread. He fought hard for a year, but he lost." "I'm so sorry," I said softly. Thomas nodded and continued. "Michael was an adventure photographer. After his mother died when he was 12, it was just the two of you. We were close, not just father and son, but best friends. This place," he gestured to the overlook, "was ours. We found it by accident when he was 14. He loved everything about it, the view, the quiet, the way the sunset lit up the mountains. We scattered his mother's ashes here. Came back when he finished high school. Again, after college. Whenever life got heavy, we'd drive up here and sit together." He paused, wiping his eyes. "When Michael got sick, we both knew what was coming. The cancer was too advanced. Near the end, he was too weak to travel. One night he cried and said he wished we could come here one last time to watch the sunset together." Tears filled my own eyes, even though I'd never met Michael. "But he couldn't make the trip," Thomas said quietly. "And a few weeks before he passed, he told me something unusual. He said he had programmed this place into his car's GPS and labeled it home. He called it an act of faith, that whoever bought the car next, if they were to, kind of person who noticed small things, would see the address and maybe decide to follow it." I frowned slightly. "But why would he do that?" Thomas turned to me with a calm intensity. "Because Michael believed that life connects people for a reason. He didn't believe in coincidences. He told me, 'Dad, whoever buys this car and drives to our spot will be looking for something, even if they don't know what it is. Be there for them. Tell them our story. Let them see our sunset.' I sat speechless, trying to take it in. A dying man had set a GPS address, trusting that someone, someday, would follow it. I've been coming here every Saturday since he died, Thomas said. Waiting. Most weeks, no one shows up. But I promised him I'd keep coming. And today, you came. I stared out at the endless stretch of forest and sky. I almost deleted the address, I admitted. I thought it was just leftover data. But you didn't, Thomas said with a faint smile. You followed it. Why? I thought for a moment. I don't know. Curiosity, I guess. I was bored. I didn't have anywhere else to be. That's enough, he said gently. That's exactly enough. Michael believed that curiosity, even the smallest kind, connects the right people. The kind who follow small impulses instead of ignoring them. We sat quietly, the silence filled with the wind moving through pine trees. After a while, Thomas asked, "So, Ben, why were you so bored that you decided to follow a random GPS address?" I laughed weakly. Because my life feels empty. I'm 26, working at a call center I hate. I dropped out of grad school because I couldn't see the point. I feel stuck, like I'm existing but not actually living. Thomas nodded slowly, as if he already knew. You're lost, he said simply. Yeah, I admitted. I guess I am. Michael was like that once, he said. After college. He had a business degree because it seemed practical. Got a job at an insurance company because it seemed smart. But he was miserable. Completely miserable. What changed? I asked. One day, he took a photography class. Just for fun. He'd always liked taking pictures on his phone. And something clicked. He realized he'd been living the life he thought he should live instead of the one he wanted to. So he quit his job, bought a camera and a backpack, and started traveling. Eventually, his work got noticed. He built a career out of what he loved. For 10 years, he lived more fully than most people do in 80. Thomas turned to me, his expression warm but serious. You drove 2 hours into the mountains for no reason except curiosity. That's not what an empty person does, Ben. That's what a searching person does. Searching for what? I asked quietly. That's the question, he said. Michael didn't know he was searching for photography until he found it. Maybe you won't know what you're looking for until you find it either, but the fact that you're curious enough to follow something that's a good sign. That's the line between just existing and actually living. We talked for hours. Thomas told me stories about Michael's travels, his philosophy on life, and how he believed experiences mattered more than achievements. I shared my own fears, how I felt like life was passing me by, while everyone else was building theirs. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and rose, Thomas said softly, Michael loved this time of day. The light, the way everything glows. We sat there together, watching the sunset, a grieving father and a lost young man, both connected by a stranger's quiet faith in curiosity. When the colors faded, Thomas reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Michael left this, he said. He told me to give it to whoever followed the GPS. He wrote it during his last weeks. With trembling hands, I took the letter and opened it. Inside was a note written in slightly uneven handwriting. You bought my car and followed a GPS address to nowhere. That already tells me something. You're searching. You may not know what for, but you're looking. I'm dying as I write this. I'm 32 and have maybe a month left. And what I've learned this year is that life isn't about having it all figured out. It's about curiosity, about following what interests you, even when it makes no sense, about saying yes to small impulses. You drove 2 hours to a mountain overlook for no logical reason. You followed curiosity instead of deleting an address. That's beautiful. That's what living actually is. My dad is probably with you right now. He's grieving, losing a child, even an adult one, breaks something inside a person. But he's also one of the kindest, wisest people I know. Talk to him. Let him tell you about our adventures, our lessons. Then take your own. Your adventures don't need to be grand, alive, to make you want to see what comes next. I spent 10 years as a photographer, traveling the world, and it was incredible. But you know what moments I cherish most? Sitting on that bench with my dad, watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. Those quiet moments are what matter. You're connected to me now, stranger. You're finishing a journey I couldn't complete. You're sitting in the place I loved most, with the person I loved most, watching the sunset I wished I could see again. Thank you for that. Thank you for following curiosity instead of ignoring it. Don't wait until you're dying to realize the point of life is simply to live it. Follow curiosity. Say yes to things. Don't stress about being on the right path. There isn't one. There's only your path, and whether you're paying attention to it. Take care of yourself. Take care of my dad. He needs people who understand that life is short and connections matter. Thank you for completing this journey. For me, Michael Carver. By the time I finished reading, my vision was blurry with tears. Thomas was crying too. We sat in silence on that bench, two strangers joined by a letter written by a man neither of us could ever forget. And for the first time in years, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt seen, like maybe my curiosity hadn't been pointless after all. Maybe it was exactly what Michael said it was, a way of truly living instead of just existing. As we walked back to our cars in the growing darkness, Thomas asked softly, "Will you come back?" "Yes," I said instantly, "if that's okay." He smiled feebly. "More than okay. I've been coming here every Saturday, sitting alone with my grief, having someone to share it with. That would mean a lot. So I came back the next Saturday, and the one after that, and the one after that. Over time, Thomas and I formed an unlikely friendship. He told me more stories about Michael, his travels, his art, and his belief that should be experienced, not endured. I told Thomas about my week, the small things that caught my interest, the thoughts that made me wonder. One afternoon, about 2 months after we met, I told him, "I've been thinking about taking a photography class. I don't know if I'll be any good, but I'm curious." Thomas smiled, the first true, unguarded smile I'd seen from him. "Then do it," he said. "Don't worry about being good. Just follow your curiosity." So I did. I enrolled in a beginner photography class at the local community college. Nothing special, basic skills, simple assignments, but I loved it. I loved how photography made me slow down and really see things. I wasn't great, not even close, but for the first time in a long while, I cared about something again. 4 months after that first drive to the Overlook, I quit my job at the call center. It was terrifying and probably reckless, but I couldn't keep doing work that drained me every day. I found a position at a local bookstore. It paid less, but it felt lighter, better. I was surrounded by books, by quiet conversations, by people who loved stories. That's where I met Gabby. She came in one afternoon, looking for a photography book, I happened to have just finished for class. When she asked for it, I couldn't help blurting out, "That's an amazing book." If you're into landscape photography, his zone system completely changes how you see light. She smiled, surprised. "You're a photographer?" "Student photographer," I admitted. "A beginner. But I'm hooked." We talked for 20 minutes about photography, books, and how she was a graphic designer trying to learn traditional techniques to improve her digital work. Before leaving, she asked if I knew any good places nearby for shooting landscapes. I almost said it then, almost told her about the overlook, but stopped myself. It felt too personal, too sacred. So I just smiled and said, "I might know a place." Every Thursday, we'd talk, always about something creative, always easy and natural. After a few weeks, I finally asked if she'd like to see that place I mentioned. "Not on a Saturday," I said. "That day's reserved for someone special, but maybe a Sunday." She said yes. 3 months after we met, we drove to the overlook together. I told her everything about Michael, Thomas, the GPS, the letter. She listened silently, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for sharing this," she said softly, "for trusting me with it." We started dating, slowly, carefully, both of us cautious but curious. And once again, that same quiet curiosity led somewhere unexpected. A few months later, Thomas came to my first student photography exhibition. I had displayed a series of photos taken at the overlook, different seasons, different times of day, all from that same bench where we always sat. "These are beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Michael would have loved them. You captured our place perfectly." "I learned from the best," I said, "from both of you. Michael taught me to follow curiosity. You taught me that connections matter more than achievements." A year later, I was back at the overlook again. Same bench, same view. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Gabby sat beside me, her camera resting on her lap. Thomas stood near the railing, quietly looking at the horizon. The wind was gentle that evening, carrying the faint scent of pine and rain. We weren't there for a random Saturday visit. We were there for something special. I'd brought a small wooden box with me, hand-carved, with Michael's initials burned into the lid. Inside were printed copies of some of the photographs I'd taken that year. The last one, the one on top, was of the sunset. That golden light melting into the mountains, the sky painted like a memory. When I handed the box to Thomas, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he said softly, "You gave him new sunsets, Ben. You finished what he started." I swallowed hard. "He gave me life again," I said. "He showed me how to actually live." Thomas placed the box gently on the bench. "Then I think we've both done right by him." We stood together, watching the day fade. Eventually, Thomas said, "You know, I think I'm ready to stop coming every Saturday. I'll still visit, of course, but not because I'm waiting anymore. I've been waiting for something to tell me it's okay to move forward. I think this is it." I nodded. "He'd be proud of you, Thomas." He smiled, tired but peaceful. "And he'd be proud of you too. You were exactly who he hoped would follow that GPS." After that day, Thomas stopped coming weekly, but we still met for coffee now and then. He'd tell me stories about his travels, his plans, even how he was volunteering at a local photo gallery now. He was healing. So was I. 2 years later, Gabby and I got married. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. Just us. Thomas was there, standing in the front row, smiling through tears. During the reception, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a short note in his handwriting. Dear Ben, you were a stranger once, but you became part of our family. You kept my promise to Michael, and in doing so, helped both of us find peace. I hope you keep following your curiosity. It's led you well so far. There's a quote Michael loved. At the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. You've come full circle, son. With love, Thomas. That letter sits framed on my desk now. Beside it is a small photograph, a picture I took years ago of the overlook at sunset. Sometimes I still drive there. I sit on that bench, camera in hand, and think about how a dying man's simple act of faith, a GPS coordinate labeled home, changed the course of my entire life. Because of one small choice, one flicker of curiosity, I found friendship, purpose, love. And every time the sky burns gold and fades into deep blue, I whisper a quiet thank you to Michael, to Thomas, to the part of myself that didn't delete that address. Because life isn't about having it figured out. It's about following curiosity, even when you don't know where it will lead. And sometimes, it leads you home, and we'll see you in the next.